The story kicks off by introducing our female protagonist. Her skin is as soft as snow, her long hair gleams like silver, and her deep blue eyes stay cool and collected, as if nothing in the world bothers her. Her name is Yvette Winchworth. After many years, the Winchworth family is back in the spotlight, celebrating the Duchess Winchworth's daughter's coming of age. The single guys are blown away by her beauty, barely able to speak around her. Meanwhile, the married men are facing a serious test of their loyalty. And so are their wives. Overnight, this powerful, rich, and beautiful woman becomes the most wanted person in the city's social scene. There's even a rumor that her future husband will be the next emperor. But when the royal family hears the rumor, Yvette suddenly disappears from the scene like she was never there. 3 months later, in her office, Duchess Heloise Winchworth is busy with work when she receives yet another letter. Annoyed by the constant stream of letters for her daughter since the coming-of-age ceremony, she pauses when the servant mentions this one is from the Queen. The Duchess asks about the contents, and the servant says the Queen asked if Duchess Winchworth remembers what the Queen did for her. With mixed feelings, the Duchess tells her servant, Jane, to bring her a new pen and paper, as she needs to write a letter to someone. When people in the imperial city ask about the famous Yvette Winchworth, some say her parents are abusing her. Others claim she has an incurable disease, and some even think she's cursed to disappear if she leaves her home. Rumors paint her as a near deity, believed to be beautiful, delicate, and pure. Meanwhile, in her bedroom, Yvette is still dozing off when her servant Jane wakes her up with a loud symbol on the Duchess's orders. The only reason Yvette never leaves the house is because she's spoiled. As the daughter of Duchess Winchworth, Yvette has been pampered since she was a kid. She only eats the best parts of her food and can't walk more than 20 meters on her own. She's ended up lazy, clueless about basic things, and dependent on others to dress and feed her. She's just an eye candy. Well, that's not a compliment. Duchess Winchworth confesses that if she could protect Yvette forever, she wouldn't be so controlling. Since Yvette's dad left, the Duchess has been managing the entire Winchworth household on her own. She admits she wouldn't have made it this far without Yvette, but she worries about how Yvette will cope on her own if she dies. Hearing this, Yvette starts to cry and agrees to do everything her mother says. Without wasting any more time, Duchess Winchworth cheerfully tells the servants to start packing immediately, leaving Yvette wondering what's going on. With a clueless expression, Yvette innocently asks her mother where she's sending her. Duchess Winchworth reveals that she's found a man she can trust to take care of Yvette. The Lion Legion, an army the royal family doesn't acknowledge, is made up of war orphans and exiles. Both the royals and regular folks are terrified of this army, especially its leader, Victor Bovat. Rumor has it he struck a deal with a demon to get an unbeatable body. Even Winchworth's butler questions the Duchess's decision to send Yvette to Victor, but the Duchess insists that Victor isn't as bad as rumors make him out to be. With a stern look and while removing his gloves, the butler says he's served the family for decades and never disobeyed. But then he breaks down and begs the Duchess not to send Yvette away. However, the Duchess reminds him that she sent the letter 3 days ago, so the Lion Legion should be arriving this afternoon, and nothing he says now will change that. The butler then asks for one favor, to remove the guards outside Yvette's room. The Duchess reluctantly agrees, thinking the butler just wants to ease his own guilt. So, there's this big drama in the royal family. With King Guprese on his deathbed, both the first prince, who's got the rightful inheritance, and the second prince, backed by the Queen, are scrambling to gain more power. And poor Yvette's coming-of-age party got caught right in the middle of it all. Now, the whole city is waiting to see which side the Winchworth family will take. Being the Duchess's daughter, Yvette's getting dragged into this political mess whether she likes it or not. The Duchess confides in Jane about David, the butler. Since he's been with the household for so long, she's sure he understands the ins and outs and can keep the other servants in line. The Duchess also admits she's not perfect, acknowledging that she couldn't have pulled off being Duchess without the Queen's help. Jane hopes that while Yvette is away, the Queen will find someone else suitable to be her daughter-in-law. The Duchess mentions she's known Victor for years and believes he's a good guy. But then, in a panic, She realizes something and asks Jane if David has been spreading the nasty rumors to Yvette. Yep, he did. Earlier, David scared Yvette with stories about Victor, this giant of a man, 6 feet tall with thighs like water buckets, who could supposedly crush 2 kids' heads with one hand. Yvette's freaked out, hiding under her blankets. But then the door opens and her loyal servants call her to come closer. They tell her the Lion Legion's already here to take her away, and this is her last chance to run. They give Yvette a book and some rope as gifts, saying they'll support whatever choice she makes. Before they go, they urge Yvette not to give up. But Yvette has no clue what to do with the gifts. She tries to hang the rope, but she's pretty sure that's not what they meant. So, she starts reading the book they gave her, titled 100 Problems for a Noble Lady Escaping Home. Yvette gets totally sucked into it, thinking it's gonna give her all the smarts she needs to plan her getaway. The book talks about using a rope for a balcony escape and all these survival skills she'll need. But it's so much info that it overwhelms her, and she ends up closing the book. So, Yvette heads to the balcony and sets up the rope like she read in the book. With a cross that bridge when you come to it attitude, she starts her little adventure. But you can probably guess how it ends pretty quick. She jumps with the rope and lands right in Victor's arms, of all people. What a coincidence, right? Their eyes meet and suddenly Yvette gets a genius idea. She asks if he's a new guard, and when Victor says yes, she tells him to carry her to the door, saying she's too tired to walk herself. And just like that, they have their first encounter. Meanwhile, in the city, everyone freaks out when the Lion Legion shows up, quickly running away and hiding, leaving their stuff behind. There's Arthur Orange, the deputy commander with a sarcastic mouth, Francis Russell, the epi wielder who loves to yell, and Hart Benson, known as the Barbarian, who speaks gently but looks terrifying. Then there's Liz, the orc warrior who tries to cheer Hart up, even though he's terrible at it. Finally, there's Fred Gustav, the potion master with a sharp tongue, always ready with a snarky comment. Arthur voices his suspicions, noting that their commander Victor, who used to hate aristocrats, came all this way to pick up the Duchess's daughter. He even split up from them to go to her house early by himself. Everyone agrees with Arthur, but Hart thinks it's fine since Victor is old enough to get married. Then, they all notice something unusual. Victor is carrying the Duchess's daughter, Yvette. With his subordinates staring at him curiously, Victor looks completely bewildered. From inside the manor, David and the other servants come running towards Yvette, looking shocked. David can't believe Yvette is being so close with a man she's just met. With sleepy eyes, Yvette says she's tired. David tells her she can't just let a strange man carry her. Yvette then turns to Victor and asks who he is. Gently placing her down, Victor introduces himself as the Lion Legion commander, there at Duchess Winchworth's request to protect Yvette. Hearing this, Yvette thinks it sounds familiar, then remembers what David told her. Suddenly from behind, Yvette's mother runs in, worried, and calls out to Yvette. She immediately hugs her, relieved that Yvette is okay and can't believe she tried to run away. The Duchess then apologizes to Victor for the embarrassing scene and instructs the servants to help Yvette get changed while she talks with Victor. The Duchess congratulates Victor, mentioning she heard the first prince wanted the Lion Legion to join the royal army. But Victor says he turned the prince down, explaining that he and his men have their own ideas about justice and don't want to be the crown's pawns. Victor also thanks the Duchess for the land she gave them, saying they're self-sufficient now and he promises to repay her kindness. With a serious expression, the Duchess reveals that in 2 years, the Winchworth family plans to team up with the Queen to help the second prince take the throne. Victor is shocked, realizing this is a serious crime. Though the Duchess understands the risks, she feels she has no other choice. She asks Victor to keep Yvette safe for her, whether the plan succeeds or fails. While they wait for Yvette to get ready, Jane tells the Lion Legion to take a break. They're amazed by the impressive displays there. Jane even lets them get up close to one of the sword displays. Arthur wonders if Yvette must love traveling, but Jane shocks him by revealing that Yvette hasn't left the house since she was 5 years old. She explains that Yvette went missing at a festival when she was 5, and they later found out her guard had colluded with bandits to kidnap her for ransom. Jane swings the sword as she talks, explaining that the guard got what he deserved. She hands the sword to Arthur, who looks confused and asks what she means. Jane says it's a bribe. She admits she's watched Yvette grow up and never thought she wouldn't be there for her, so she begs the Lion Legion to take good care of Yvette for her. Jane finds Yvette in the library and is pretty shocked by what she sees, Yvette buried under tons of books. She helps Yvette out and Yvette hands her a book, asking her to give it back to Martha, the servant who helped Yvette escape and is now arrested. When Jane sees the book, she realizes something. She tells Yvette that the book doesn't belong to Martha. It's a gift from Yvette's father. Back when Yvette's dad was around, he asked Jane to give that book to Yvette. Even though the title seemed funny, the book was full of cool stuff about geography and biology. Jane was puzzled why Yvette's dad would give her that book. He said he couldn't argue if Yvette liked being at home, but just in case she changed her mind, he wanted her to know the world is huge and full of possibilities. On the day of Yvette's departure, as the Duchess sees her off, she reminds her that life won't be as cushy as it is at home, so she needs to look out for herself. Yvette seems hesitant to leave, asking her mom if she can just stay put. But the Duchess pleads with her to listen this one time. With a final reminder to be careful on her journey, the Duchess leaves Yvette to go on her way. The Duchess and the other servants watch Yvette's carriage as it moves away. Jane reassures the Duchess that Yvette will reach the Lion Legion safely. This is the longest they've been apart from Yvette since she was born, and the Duchess worries if Yvette will hold it against her. But Jane, in her calm voice, tells the Duchess to chill out, saying this journey will be unforgettable for Yvette. Yvette is still the hottest topic in the Imperial City, and the rumors are flying. Some say she's actually a brat, wild and arrogant. They claim she even insulted the Queen when they first met. Others insist the Queen was so mad when Yvette snubbed the second prince that she stormed off. And then there are those who say the Winchworth family was shamed and that Yvette won't show her face until she's been trained to be a proper lady. But folks still wonder what Yvette's up to these days. Well, Yvette's knocked out in her carriage right now. But apparently the bumpy roads got her rolling all over the place inside. So, she tells the coachman to pull over. They all take a breather, amazed to see the legendary Yvette Winchworth, but kinda shocked at how disheveled she is after just a short ride. Victor, with his serious face, steps closer to ask what's up. The coachman explains that Yvette ain't used to carriages. Victor shoots Yvette a scary look, leaving her trembling. Without a word, Victor turns and walks off. Arthur, seeing this, advises Victor to go easy on Yvette, or she'll end up resenting him, especially since Arthur has a crush on her himself. But Victor shoots down the idea, saying there's no way. Arthur suggests maybe Victor will develop feelings for her over time, but Victor shuts that down too. He explains that Duchess Winchworth asked him to look after Yvette for the next 2 years, and that's all there is to it. Plus, the Duchess mentioned earlier that her daughter's been spoiled rotten, so Victor figures he can whip Yvette into shape. Even though he told the Duchess Yvette doesn't need to become like the Lion Legion, hearing about her bad habits makes him feel like he has to intervene. Still, Arthur reminds him he doesn't have to be mean about it. In the Lion Legion, the commander's attitude sets the tone for everyone else. If Victor's cold to Yvette, the others won't exactly be lining up to be her friend. And for Yvette, who's just joined this new group, it might be a rough road ahead. Later that night, during dinner, Hart's visibly annoyed with the food, wishing they could get something fresher. The others remind him to keep it down so Fred doesn't overhear. Fred Gustav is their chef, the only mage in the Lion Legion, and he's pretty darn good at curses. Thanks to his abilities and his unpredictable personality, he's ranked 3rd on the list of people you don't want to mess with in the Lion Legion. Right now, he's feeling more pressure than ever. Apparently, Yvette's stare is making him uneasy. Fred can't help but feel nervous around Yvette, who he thinks is drop-dead gorgeous. He's been avoiding her, so he's puzzled why she's approaching him now. His mind goes into overdrive, imagining Yvette as some stuck-up mean girl who's about to say something nasty to him. Fred starts to lose it, getting ready to unleash his magic, which freaks out everyone else. Liz rushes over to try and calm him down, asking if he and Yvette had a fight. Meanwhile, Yvette, holding a tray with a bowl on it, just says she's hungry. When Yvette gets the food, she looks puzzled. Liz explains it's porridge made with nearby wild veggies and the jerky they brought. Yvette takes a spoonful, but then something weird happens. Someone rushes to tell their commander that Yvette passed out. When Victor comes to check on Yvette, she looks really sick. Everyone's freaking out, wondering what's wrong with her all of a sudden. Victor helps Yvette up, apologizing for being forward, and then he touches her stomach, asking if she's got any pain there. Yvette shakes her head. Then Victor touches her forehead and asks if she's feeling feverish or having trouble breathing. But again, Yvette shakes her head. This whole situation has Victor scratching his head, especially since Yvette seems awake and physically okay. Then, out of nowhere, Yvette tries to speak, taking it slow. She says the food tastes awful. Fred's about to blow his top, but thankfully Francis steps in before things get messy, while Arthur's cracking up laughing. Even Hart agrees, saying the food's pretty awful. With Fred calming down and Francis stepping closer, Victor's still holding on to Yvette. Francis suggests they whip up something different just for her. Getting up, Victor says it's not necessary. Instead, he declares they're going hunting tomorrow, leaving everyone wide-eyed in shock. With a piercing look, Victor tells Yvette that if she's not into eating what others make, she's gotta learn to hunt for herself. Francis looks thrilled to see Yvette fitting perfectly in the hunting outfit. Since it's Yvette's first time wearing pants, she feels a bit different. While adjusting the outfit on Yvette, Francis reminisces about her own younger days, not expecting her old clothes to come in handy again, especially since she wore them when she was 13. Yvette is surprised to learn that Francis was already hunting at such a young age. Francis then shares a story from her hunting days, proudly explaining how she successfully provided meat for her group and even got the scar on her face during that hunt. Yvette, in awe, tells Francis she's cool. Francis reassures Yvette, telling her not to worry, especially with their commander around. After getting ready, Yvette is set to go hunting with Victor. He offers his hand to help her onto his horse. When they arrive at the hunting spot, Victor turns to Yvette and tells her they need to slide down a steep slope, which shocks her. She quickly shakes her head, signaling she can't do it. Without warning, Victor scoops her up and jumps, sliding down with her in his arms. When they reach the bottom, Yvette is still in Victor's arms, trembling slightly. Victor, noticing this, asks if she's had enough. But when he looks at her, he sees she's actually thrilled, her expression almost begging to do it again. So, Victor continues sliding down with her, and Yvette seems to enjoy it even more. They take a break and drink some water, but Yvette's face beams with happiness, like she's just enjoyed a theme park ride. Well, she did go down the slope 7 times. Victor realizes this is why Duchess Winchworth chose to fight alone and send Yvette away. This girl was raised in a sheltered environment, completely defenseless against the outside world. Now that the Duchess has entrusted her to him, he's determined to prepare Yvette for her future. He decides that during these 2 years, he will at least teach her basic self-preservation skills. Despite his resolve to be tougher on her, he can't help but keep a protective eye on her. A target appears, and Victor swiftly catches it with a skillful attack. He realizes it won't be enough, but then a giant bear emerges, ready to strike him from behind. Seemingly defenseless, Victor effortlessly takes it down without even looking back. Yvette, perched on a high tree branch, watches in shock as Victor quickly cuts the prey into pieces. He packs up the meat and leaves the bones behind, momentarily forgetting about Yvette in the tree. Thankfully, he remembers and quickly returns to get her down. Victor asks if Yvette saw the move he just demonstrated, but she doesn't respond. He wonders if she has some sort of mental health issue. He then tells Yvette to try hunting. She pulls back the bowstring, but even the smaller bow seems too difficult for her. Victor thinks he might need to get her a child's bow next time. Leaning closer to Yvette, Victor gently takes the bow from her hands and offers to show her how to do it. He warns her to be careful as relying solely on strength could cause injury. Victor then demonstrates step by step how to properly use the arrow. Yvette watches in awe at how easily Victor catches the prey. Turning back to her, Victor hands Yvette the bow and tells her it's her turn. Yvette then tries the bow with Victor guiding her. He notices her hands are shaking and her breathing is irregular, common issues for beginners, but she seems particularly eager to learn. Despite her efforts, none of the arrows hit the target. Seeing her out of breath and her shaking hand struggling to pull the string again, Victor gently pulls her hand and stops her. He gazes at her and asks what's making her so anxious. Yvette looks confused by the sudden question, but then explains that she wants to achieve something quickly because she thinks Victor is awesome. Yvette also mentions that everyone in the Lion Legion is amazing, with great skills, courage, and experience. She realizes it's because they've spent years venturing out and working hard in the real world. She admits that they're nothing like her and sometimes can't help but wish she could be as strong as they are. Maybe then she wouldn't be a burden to her mom anymore. Victor is taken aback by Yvette's words. He steps closer, gently taking her hand. It dawns on him that Yvette can speak normally, something he hadn't noticed before. He's momentarily speechless, realizing that she used to only say single words or short phrases. Seeing Yvette looking sad, Victor tries to comfort her by sharing his own story. He tells her that he first used a knife when he was just 6 years old, not against beasts or demons, but against other men. During that harsh winter, crops withered and livestock froze to death. Some desperate adults even stooped so low as to attack children for survival. In one such instance, young Victor intervened when someone targeted a kid right in front of him. Over the years, he's had to deal with numerous ruthless criminals firsthand, but he still vividly recalls how it felt to take a life back then. Victor also points out that many in the Lion Legion have endured similar ordeals. Suffering has molded their strength. He emphasizes that if given a choice, they wouldn't willingly subject themselves to such torment all the time. Victor gently pats Yvette's head and reassures her that it's not her fault for growing up in wealth and comfort. He tells her not to feel guilty about it. Victor explains to Yvette that strength isn't just about physical power, it's also about protecting others. He believes that once she finds someone she wants to protect, she'll become strong. Yvette is deeply touched by Victor's words, leaving her speechless. She feels immediately inspired by his encouragement. With her newfound determination, Yvette asks Victor if there's anything she can do to help. Victor is surprised by her sudden eagerness and pauses to think. They decide she can gather more fruits for them. With Victor's assistance in reaching the high ones, he also educates her about which ones are poisonous. Now, he watches as she digs in and gathers fruits on her own, even if she's a bit clumsy at it. Despite her sloppiness, Yvette is genuinely happy with what she's doing and enjoys learning new things from Victor. As night falls at their camp, everyone marvels at the food served. Frances even commends Yvette for gathering the fruit herself. But then, Fred, with his sharp tongue, starts making comments about the food, almost as if he's trying to provoke Yvette. Luckily, Frances steps in to defend her. Suddenly, Yvette approaches Fred, surprising him. With her eyes shining, she asks him if the food tastes awful. Fred is caught off guard and tries to avoid her gaze. Surprised by the turn of events, Fred admits that it's barely edible before quickly moving away and telling her not to come near him. Victor observes the scene from afar, relieved to see that Yvette is starting to bond with the other members. The next morning, the noise outside rouses Victor from his sleep. He had stayed up all night studying the terrain. Hart, carrying a barrel, greets Victor and offers him some tea. Victor, still groggy, asks Hart what's going on. Hart explains that Yvette is now the food judge. They had planned to make something delicious for her, especially since she didn't enjoy the pie yesterday and barely managed to keep it down. However, things escalated, and now everyone's competing to impress her with their culinary skills. They've decided to share the extra food together to prevent any waste. But it seems Arthur isn't too thrilled about the arrangement. But when Frances invites them for a drink, Arthur quickly forgets about his complaint and rushes over. It's Kugu wine, Frances explains to Yvette, a type of alcoholic juice that won't get them drunk and is perfect for a morning beverage. Watching it all from his spot, Victor is surprised. He remembers how long it took him to bond with his comrades initially, 3 whole years. Seeing how quickly Yvette has connected with them leaves Victor even more stunned. She only met them yesterday, yet she's already one of them. Yvette notices Victor looking down, so she rushes over to him. Tugging at his clothes from behind, she suggests they eat together. Victor is touched momentarily, but when he examines the bowl closely, he notices Yvette has only picked the food she likes and left the rest. Feeling irritated, Victor tells Yvette he'll make sure she eats everything while he feeds her the broccoli. Arthur observes Victor and Yvette interacting, noting the growing closeness between them. He speculates aloud about the possibility of them becoming a couple, a sentiment echoed by Francis. However, Hart seems uneasy, expressing concern about how their comrades back at base camp might react to Yvette. This thought casts a shadow over the group's optimism. Arthur, taking a sip of his drink, mentions Cassandra, hinting that she might not be as welcoming to Yvette as the others. The next day, they resume their journey homeward. Arthur estimates they'll reach home in 2 more days if all goes well. However, Victor cautions them not to relax their guard, reminding them of the unfamiliar territory. Suddenly, Victor spots someone suspicious up on the cliff, hiding behind a large rock. He attempts to call out to them, but before he can, a strange noise emerges. The large rock begins to roll down the cliff, heading straight for the carriage with Yvette inside. What will happen to Yvette? Can Victor save her in time? Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and want us to continue the story in our next one. Thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoyed it.